Good evening, I'm Shane Jones, leading the news at 7. Barbados, as it was known 50 years ago, is never coming back. While Prime Minister Frundle Stewart believes looking back can be a useful tool in planning for the future, he says it would be unwise to try to reconstruct the past. The Prime Minister made the comments during an evening of appreciation at Ilaro Court. Sharika Griffith has more.
As Barbados prepares to mark another year of independence, Prime Minister Frundle Stewart says he's aware there seems to be some uncertainty as it relates to where the country is and what we believe in. And while he believes the past can be a guide, the Prime Minister believes there are some things that are no longer applicable to present day.
Too much has happened over the last 50 years for us to reconstruct that Barbados. Our material foundations have changed, and therefore we're not casting a nostalgic glance into the past and trying to reconstruct the old Barbados, because again, there was not everything good about the old Barbados either. But what we want to do is to create a relevant Barbados that is inclusive, and a Barbados in which every man, woman and child can feel that he or she has a chance.
Prime Minister Stewart delivered the remarks at an evening of appreciation, where those who contributed to last year's independence celebrations were recognized. During the ceremony, the Prime Minister was presented with the findings of a National Values Assessment prepared by the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies. The study was prompted by 3 questions the Prime Minister posed to the nation in the lead-up to the 50th anniversary celebrations. In essence, what features of Barbadian life should be reclaimed, what should be retained, and what should be discarded as quickly as possible. The Prime Minister says society is held together by shared values, and without them, there will be a serious decline in Barbados.
Where man to man becomes a wolf because you don't know what to expect from your neighbor or your friend, you don't know what the people you're dealing with do or what they wouldn't do. You are never sure about their moral or ethical hinterland. And therefore, in that kind of situation of insecurity, as Hobbes observed, it's only a question of time before life becomes solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short.
Those receiving recognition for their work during the independence celebrations included Minister of Foreign Affairs Senator Maxine McLean, Labour Minister Dr. Esther Bayer-Suckoo, Independent Senator Professor Emeritus Sir Henry Fraser, former BDF Chief of Staff Colonel Alvin Quinton, and CEO of the National Cultural Foundation, Cranston Brown. Sharika Griffith, Cbc News.
There was a heavy police presence in the District A Magistrates Courtyard this morning as the 5 men charged with the murder of British national Stephen Weir appeared in court before Magistrate Christy Cuffy Sargent. 35-year-old Sunil DeCourcy Broom of number 7 Alamanda Drive, West Terrace, St. James, Keno Nikito Griffith, 30 years of Pounders Gap, Westbury Road, St. Michael, Christopher Darnley Michael Clark, 26 of Otterson, St. Philip, Torio Akiro Watson, 26 years of Block 6D, Field Road, Wildy, St. Michael, and Basil Alfonso Branch, 27 years of Morris Gap, Westbury Road, St. Michael, have been remanded to Dodds until October 11th. They were not required to plead to the indictable charge. Broom is also expected to reappear at the Oistins Court on October 9th in connection with other matters. Nearly 2 weeks ago, Weir's body was discovered in a remote area at Melverton in St. George. Members of the Royal Barbados Police Force have seized 16 firearms and a total of 593 rounds of assorted ammunition in 4 separate operations conducted during the last 24 hours. During one of these operations, over 400 rounds of ammunition and 6 firearms were seized at the Bridgetown port as a result of an intelligence lead operation involving customs enforcement officers and members of the anti-gun unit. A number of persons are currently assisting police in their investigations. 12 Barbadians touched down at the Grantley Adams International Airport this evening after being evacuated from Tortola in the British Virgin Islands, which suffered significant damage as a result of Hurricane Irma. Now, just yesterday, 4 Barbadians stranded in Dutch St. Martin were brought home. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been crucial in the operation, and joining us on the line now live to talk about the efforts is Senator Maxine McLean. Senator McLean, good evening to you.
Good evening to you, sir.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, can you tell me how difficult was it to coordinate the evacuation of Barbadians from both Tortola and the BVI?
Well, it is challenging, one, because first of all, we needed to establish that, you know, who would have been the individuals there. We've been getting responses to the ministry's request to provide us with information and as detailed information as possible. But having the names and being able to locate persons is another thing. And as you can imagine, we're going into jurisdictions that are sovereign nations, etc., and the cooperation with the officials, that is very critical. Given the extreme devastation, that took some time, but we have been working collaboratively with both regional entities, our bilateral partners, the UK, the Canadians, etc., the French, and so on. And before, you know, so it's been difficult. In fact, this evening, you mentioned a group of about 12 persons that they would have come in on UK military aircraft, which would have brought the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson into Barbados as he was transiting the region, having visited some of the distressed territories. We are able, therefore, to work with them. I also had a chance to speak to the Secretary General of CARICOM. He was at the airport awaiting a flight to Guyana because they are also looking to bring into Barbados, in addition to the 12, I think tonight we will see at least 2 more Barbadians included in a group of CARICOM nationals who would come out on an RSS flight. But it has been tough because, in his words, he has never seen, in fact, in the words of the Secretary General and the Foreign Secretary Johnson, they have never seen devastation of this type. So it is a difficult task, and I am happy that we are able to get Barbadians home. It's a slow process, but we are working very hard. And it was really a relief to see that group this evening. I met with them, and they obviously were anxious to get home because they have been under some extreme, extremely difficult situations. So we will continue that effort working along with, as I said, our partners. We've had a promise from the United Kingdom through the High Commissioner. She has promised that as they go into the various overseas territories, that would include Turks and Caicos. Of course, they've been into Tortola and will have to do that again, and so on, that we will try our best to get Barbadians evacuated as soon as possible. We continue to work with CARICOM. That would include the RSS Sedema and, of course, the Barbados Defense Force. So it is an extremely challenging task. And, of course, added to that, we are getting calls from Barbadians in the USA, but as the airport opens up and so on, people are in a better position to make, you know, alternate arrangements, etc. But it is harrowing.
Okay, Senator McLean, I understand, as you're saying, it's a harrowing experience. It's always difficult with an evacuation of this kind. And as we are speaking, there are pictures on the screen now of those coming in today. But can you tell me, you're starting at the point that we know that it is a very difficult exercise. And how satisfied are you with what has happened? Or do you think things could have been happening a bit more swiftly?
You know, it is too early for me. I would hope that we could get it done more quickly, but I think to appreciate what has been transpiring is to understand the extreme severity, because we are not talking about a single jurisdiction. We are talking about a number of islands. We are talking about different legal arrangements, I mean legal systems, etc. We're talking about the Dutch, the French, the English, and so on. So it is something that I believe that with any other situation, this is something that is unprecedented, that we will very quickly try to do an assessment to see how we can improve, because I do not think that we have seen anything of this proportion in the region and indeed the hemisphere. And so it is an extreme form of disruption of the lives, the very lives of people. To hear the description of Barbuda, for example, from the Secretary General of CARICOM is to, I don't think we can even imagine. And to talk to some of the persons this afternoon, they have gone through hell, and it is tough. And we are working hard, as I said, with those partners to get information, because as we continue, people move around, etc. I'm happy to say that my understanding is that in some instances, in the case of Turks and Caicos, the airport is opened, I think, in Provo, and I've gotten reports that some persons we were trying to assist have been able to, or will be flying out to the UK. But there are some countries that we need to get some information from. For example, in talking to the Canadian High Commissioner this evening, the issue of Saba, for example, there are some islands we have heard nothing from. And that is because, one, telecommunications have been disrupted, and two, even access by sea seems to be difficult. So we just have to persevere. It is rough, we understand that, but we certainly are seeing the country, in the respective countries, the military, in the case of the UK, the Dutch, etc., going in and trying to minimize the level of lawlessness and criminal activity, because that also, with curfews, would hamper the ability to move around. So I just call on Barbadians where they know other persons. For example, this evening, as I before the group that came in departed to go, to exit the airport, they were able to provide me with a couple of names that they believe need to come out. Some of them are working, and I would therefore contact the employers to try and make sure that those things are addressed, of course.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator McLean. There's a wealth of information there, and we hope that you guys continue to do a good job to get the assistance needed to these people in these hurricane-ravaged countries. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson has met British soldiers in Barbados on his way to territories worst hit by Hurricane Irma. Mr. Johnson says his visit is a very important statement to show people the government was there for the UK nationals in a time of need. It comes after the UK government's response to the disaster was criticized as being too slow. 9 people are known to have died in the British Virgin Islands and 1 in Anguilla as a result of Hurricane Irma. Mr. Johnson has pledged long-term support to the British territories in the Caribbean.
We have every sympathy for the suffering of the people who have been hit by this extraordinary hurricane, the biggest in 150 years. But I think most fair-minded people, looking at the deployment that the UK has made, this is the biggest military deployment we've seen since Libya. So you've got about 50 or so in Anguilla, you've got 125 in BVI, about 30 in the TCI, in Turks and Caicos. And they are contributing massively to people's sense of confidence. It's all about rebuilding that sense that these beautiful islands have a future. It will take time to rebuild, but the UK is going to be in the lead in that recovery plan.
And we will have more on the disaster wreaked by Hurricane Irma in our regional and international segment after the break. Stay with us.
Attention! No six, no stones can break my bones when I'm drinking. Milk, Pine Hill milk.
The message that appeals to me most is number 5, which says I cannot control anyone or anything outside of me. I think it means to me that you can't control what anyone else is doing, that you could tell them, for instance, if someone is doing something wrong, you can tell them what they're doing is wrong, and you can tell them the ways that they're doing it, which is incorrect, but you can't stop them from doing it.
One businesswoman has ignored the grim predictions about Speightstown and has opened her first business there. Yolande Sobers says there has been a positive response to the 2-month-old Timing Boutique. She believes the store has filled a void in the city.
One of the problems with Speightstown is the lack of variety, and the fact that most places in Speightstown don't cater for all types of people or sizes of people. So we sell from small to XXX. So we try to cater for more people.
Ms. Sobers is considering plans to expand the store's offerings and staff.
We are looking at other options in terms of expanding. Now people come in and ask about doing shoes and men clothing. So those are options that we probably could look into in the future.
Just days after historian Trevor Marshall sounded an alarm about a fallen historic plaque on the Lewis Wickham Boardwalk in the city, it has been repaired. The plaque was damaged last week by rough seas generated by the passage of Hurricane Irma. The monument marks the spot where African slaves were offloaded and sold after journeying across the Middle Passage. It was unveiled in 2009. The Barbados Water Authority wishes to advise the public that the Bell pumping station will be offline on Friday, September 22nd from 1 p.m. until 9 p.m. to facilitate major upgrades. As a result, residents and businesses in parts of St. Michael and Christchurch may experience low water pressure or outages. For a list of the affected districts, customers are asked to stay tuned to the stations of the CBC or visit the authority's website at www.barbadoswaterauthority.com for further information. Be sure to view tonight's episode of Water Wednesdays at 7:55 for details of the Bell pumping station upgrade. After the break, we'll take a look at stories making headlines across the region.
New on Morning Barbados.
I know I'm ready to hit the spot, and I'm bringing along a friend.
This one is sure to hit the spot. Fridays on Morning Barbados. See you at 6.
I'm just a DJ, baby, mixing for you.
Only one station delivers the soundtracks of your life.
Hey, we're 94.7 FM, the University of Musical Diversity, the most frequently frequented frequency in the Caribbean. I'm the Admiral.
Put on your dancing shoes and get on the dance floor. We've got all of your classic jams right here at 94.7 FM with me, Jaquila, in the midday.
It's Valentino Tempo all over your radio right here on 94.7 every weekday afternoon, 2 until 7. It's your afternoon getaway. So join me right here, the greatest hits of the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and now.
94.7 FM.
Community Files.
The Community Independence Celebration Secretariat will be hosting a series of Spirit of the Nation talent shows in different zones. The first talent show will take place in the Southern Zone at the St. Leonard's Boys School, Richmond Gap, St. Michael, on Saturday, September 16th. The Central Zone will host its show at the Lester Vaughan Secondary School, Cane Garden, St. Thomas, on Saturday, September 23rd, and the Northern Zone at the Alexandra School, Queen Street, St. Peter, on Saturday, September 30th. All shows start at 6 p.m. and are free to the public.
Across the Caribbean, brought to you by CIBC First Caribbean.
A week after Hurricane Irma struck a string of Caribbean islands, some residents find themselves in darkness as power remains out and many are increasingly worried as food and water run scarce. In the storm's aftermath, residents and tourists described a volatile situation with vexing challenges ahead that have forced people to fend for themselves.
The island of St. Martin. Last week, one of the jewels of the Caribbean, now a paradise lost. Not a day went by, she says, without us thinking that we were very lucky to live on this idyllic island. Today, it is just complete chaos. 6 days after Irma pummeled St. Martin, officials say more than 90% of the buildings on the island are damaged or destroyed. Food and water are still scarce. Power remains out for most. Thousands of tourists were stranded for days.
It was horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. Never been that scared in my life.
The desperation has led to looting and violence, with reports not yet confirmed by CNN of armed men roaming the streets. Dr. Lachlan and Kayanne McClay were vacationing at this resort on St. Martin when Irma struck. McClay spent several days caring for the injured, but also found himself forced to stand guard against looters, sharing this text with a colleague back home. Military is trying to control chaos, but nothing is safe after dark. Lots of looting. I was on patrol last night with machete until sun came up. And the story is much the same all across the hard-hit Caribbean. On the British Virgin Islands, one resident told CNN that the situation is only getting worse.
The supermarkets here, they double the prices. The gas stations, they double the prices. So we have run out of cash. It's just scary. And I was at a gas station trying to buy gas, and a guy on a motorbike, a scooter, came up and pulled out a gun.
Help has been slow to arrive to many of the islands where people are struggling to get by day to day. And long-term, officials say full recovery may be years away.
When you think you've perhaps seen some of the worst damage caused by Hurricane Irma, you come here to the largest island in the British Virgin Islands, and you can see the devastation is widespread here on Tortola. You can see what's left of one of the marinas here. This is certainly one of the hardest hit regions. People here had been struggling to find food, to find water. However, supplies are slowly making their way here, and also neighboring Caribbean islands that have been hard hit. Many of the residents that call some of those places home have had to evacuate to nearby Puerto Rico, the United States. Many of the people who live here are trying to make it back to the UK. We've also heard some remarkable stories of survival. People who have essentially had to huddle inside their homes to ride out their storm, and then had to scrap whatever they can to try to eat and drink. And that is the reality for many people here. Resources are slowly but surely making their way to some of these regions that were devastated by Hurricane Irma nearly a week ago, but it's certainly not at the rate that many locals would like to see it happen. What does stand out after our time here in the Caribbean has been the resilience for many of the people here who are determined to clean up, they are determined to rebuild, and they are particularly determined to get their piece of paradise back. But for now, the reality is that long road to recovery, people are just getting started on that journey.
The situation in the British Virgin Islands has been described as a major disaster. That's according to Director of the Caribbean Disaster Relief Unit, Atlee Rodney. Speaking at the airport in Tortola, he said the CDRU team was working to help with the distribution of relief supplies. He indicated one of the challenges was the lack of communication between the islands, with many unsure about the extent of the damage. There was significant visible damage at the airport, which was only open to emergency flights. The nearby marina was also severely impacted.
In terms of the infrastructure that has been damaged, a number of houses has been destroyed, a number of critical buildings I noticed has been destroyed, including some police stations, some fire stations and so on, and a lot of business sector, especially in the yachting area. A number of yachts are on their sides, so a lot of yachts are damaged, and I think it is devastating from what I'm seeing.
Meanwhile, Deputy Director Lieutenant Commander Graham Rochford explains the team has been specifically tasked to assist Anguilla and the BVI since Barbuda has been able to get assistance from Antigua. He says the team is usually commissioned to spend 2 weeks.
There are 9 for this particular team. We're supposed to go up to a strength of about 35 persons, which will include possibly a small security component that will also help with the securing of the items at the various points of entry.
The Sandals Sister Resort in Turks and Caicos beaches is among the facilities affected by the passage of Hurricane Irma. That's the word from General Manager of Sandals Barbados, Ferry Seafinger, as he was speaking to CBC News about the Hurricane Irma relief efforts. Mr. Seafinger says the extent of the damage is not fully known as communication systems are down, but they have started doing what they can to assist the victims.
We were able to already start sending some supplies in, but the most important islands are Barbuda, St. Martin, Tortola, some of the islands in the BVIs, they really have it really bad. Those are complete houses that were destroyed.
Mr. Seafinger says the Hurricane Irma relief efforts are not limited to staff and guests of the Sandals Resort Barbados, as the public can get involved.
We will accept anything that will be helpful to have a family start a new life, basically. We received emails from the Barbados Hospitality or the Tourism and Hospitality organization with lists of items that are needed, and it varies from diapers to plywood.
Across the Caribbean, brought to you by CIBC First Caribbean.
A glimpse into the world of sports is just ahead, but before we get there, here's a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
Do not leave an extra set of keys in a secret hiding place in your car. Thieves check the visors, ashtrays, under the floor mats, and fenders as a matter of course. This auto theft prevention tip is brought to you in association with the Royal Barbados Police Force.